And greetings, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Griffin Gaming RPG, and let's see, what is today? Today is September the 12th, Tuesday, and it's the day that we go back and review 10 for the Chairman by Chris Roberts from Cloud Imperium Games. And you may be asking, why, Griff? Why? Why are we going back and watching these videos that came out 10 years ago? Well, let's see, the ones we're watching now are 9 years ago. Well, as I mentioned before, I thought to do this because there are many people who I've met and talked to who don't or have never seen the 10 for the Chairman series, and also quite a few of them who are unaware of some of the ideas that Chris Roberts shared that he would like to see in the game Star Citizen and Squadron 42. And so I thought it might have been, while this lull period was going on prior to CitizenCon, I thought this might be a good time to go back and reflect and look at the vision of the game, so that there will be hopefully some information shared. Maybe people will understand maybe why some of the things that have been done in relation to the development of the game. Answer some questions that I frequently hear people ask that people were asking 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and hopefully we'll go back and just see whether or not CIG is living up to what it is stated it wants to do in relation to developing this game. So that's the reason why I decided to go back and review this particular series. And we started out from the very beginning. Today we're at episodes 13, 14, and 15, which actually Chris often did a variation of 10 for the Chairman called 10 for the devs, 10 for the developers. Right now we have it on SCL as calling all devs. But this is a time where he would bring in different people of the development team to also be on the show to answer questions from the community. So 10 for the Chairman was basically questions that were submitted by subscribers. You had to be a subscriber. You had to go on Spectrum and you would post one of your questions, and then they would pick these random questions. This is before we started voting up. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't think there was a voting up system at the time. But Chris would have these certain questions and he would respond to them. And so hopefully that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go back and hit some of those questions. Thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate that as always. Want to remind you that we are doing a fundraiser for St. Jude Children's Hospital. I neglected to put the promo in. At least I thought I had it in here, but I don't. And so I'll make sure I have it in next time for you guys to be able to see the promo for it. But hopefully you guys will have been following us over at Soul Citizens. We've been raising money for St. Jude Children's Hospital for research for children's cancer. And I think on Sunday we left off at $2,650. We were only $350 away from our final goal of $3,000, which I honestly believe we'll reach by next weekend. And that's our goal, to reach $3,000 by next Sunday so we could do our 12-hour live stream. Anyway, you can find more information about that. I'll try to put a link in while we're watching this as well. Excuse me. Excuse me again, goodness gracious. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's start looking at episode 13 again of 10 for the Chairman, but this week it is entitled 10 for the Developers. So let's pop into that and let's get it rolling. Here we go. If I get my mouse in the right place. This dual screen thing is still messing with my head.
Hey everyone, Brian Chambers from Frankfurt. Jared reached out to me, asked me if I could help out for this edition, so here I am. Let's get right to it. You guys posted questions, so I dug through, see what I could answer, what I can't. I'm probably going to mess up names, and excuse me for my dull background. Sal Saldian asked, what are some things about Star Citizen that has drawn yourself and so many other talented people to the Frankfurt studio to work on this project? From your perspective as a studio lead, has the crowdfunding model been a hurdle to overcome in regards to head hunting talent? First of all, it'll sound like a a fluff piece, but it's not. So honestly, having doing this for quite a while, the ambition behind this project and the commitment behind all the senior staff, Chris and Aaron and the whole team, what they're able to pull together with the community, and also them wanting pushing boundaries technically on design, kind of forging some new ground in my opinion and others. It's really kind of what pulled us here to, take a look, and, 18 months later, here we are still working and pushing on things. In regards to the crowdfunding, honestly, I don't think it's hurt at all. It's actually, uh, it gets us noticed from time to time, obviously, from the amount that we've crowdfunded, and that draws people's attention, which is great. It gives us a little bit more exposure, and people kind of know who we are. I do get questioned occasionally from candidates in regards to crowdfunding and what does that mean, and the finances and so on. And I take the time to explain the detail, what we're doing day to day, month to month, midterm, long term, etc. Um, so the most I say would impact is, they want to know that things are secure if they're going to join us as a team, because it's, for these guys here, we're hiring guys that are experienced and do this for a living, and it's their career per se. Osmosis asks, what are the...
Stop there for a second and acknowledge who dropped in. Lady Space Patrol, thank you. Thank you for the follow. Good to see you. Anyway, it's always good to see Brian Chambers, right? Everybody used to call him the Star Citizen Viking. But it's an interesting question. Was there what drew them to come work for Cloud Imperium? Most of these guys, as you guys know, wow, thank you, Lady Space Patrol, for the Prime sub as well. Thank you so much. Thanks for kicking it off. A lot of these developers, people who are, or the leads in particular, worked in software development for various companies, Sony, EA, a lot of other companies they've worked in. Some of them knew Chris from way back when, from the days of Origin and Microsoft as well. But the question is, what drew them to be there, and why did they take on this job, especially with it being so unique, with it being crowdfunded at the time? Who knew how long money would last, right? So maybe you're taking a risk of coming on board something that's being funded completely by a gaming community. But he says that really what really drew them in, it was a no-brainer. It was the fact of the challenge. It was the idea and the vision of what they were trying to do, which is interesting. I mean, it's kind of like, I kind of think of it like when you're in a band, right? Like I was a musician for a while, and you can either go in a band and be like a cover band, which means like you just like playing, music of other people, and you enjoy those songs and you have a great time playing them because you love that music. And then there's those people who go into a band to come up with their own original ideas, and to do something different. And that takes a lot of work to be unique and to be different. And obviously, if you're a cover band, you only go so far. You become like a lot of other bands, right? Bands that might play locally in bars or play at festivals and things like that, but you're playing other people's music. Oh boy, what a parallel to real game development, right? I never thought about it that way. A lot of folks out there just doing what other game developers are doing. And then you can be someone who does something different that stands out in the crowd, right? And be unique. So you can obviously see from a career position, if you've been working in development for a while, maybe you do look for a challenge. And that is something that Brian says he did, many of the other developers did. Yeah, Lady Space Patrol, I started back in June, maybe August, I don't know, June, July, and I started streaming again, middays on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I just kind of do it as an aside to do something a little bit different. But thank you again for stopping by. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's take a look at question number 2.
Asks, what are the advantages and disadvantages of working with 4 separate satellite studios in 4 separate time zones as compared to one centralized studio? I think the biggest hurdle, honestly, is communication. On the production side, on the senior level, across all sides, we need to make sure that the communication is as solid as possible, and that we're communicating in a way that all the people that need to know the information understand where to go and how to get the information, if they have questions. that's something that I think we're constantly on the production side looking at and reevaluating. I don't think that there's, honestly, and it's my opinion, I don't think there's any one perfect model to it of how to do it or how not to do it. Um, but it's putting things in place, having the flexibility to adjust them as they needed or need to be. Um, we've done a pretty good job so far. We've made a good amount of changes even since Frankfurt's been involved. Stuff been driven by the UK, with Aaron stepping up and kind of overseeing all the studios on the production level. It's really kind of pulled stuff together so we're all speaking the same language. It's definitely sometimes, though, frustrating. I'll get emails at 2 in the morning. I'll need questions answered when people are asleep in LA. So it definitely has some disadvantages. But at the same time, it also evens itself out because work is being done almost on a 24-hour basis, to some extent, which keeps things churning. So, we'll leave here at night in Frankfurt and come back in the morning, and we'll have seen progress and had things checked in and so on, from LA or Austin that are kind of vital for us moving forward.
So there we go. As you guys know, there are multiple studios that CIG works out of worldwide, different time zones, everything from the West Coast in the U.S., excuse me, all the way to Germany. Various studios, and since then they've added more studios. We know that now Montreal has been added into it. And so he says it's pro and con. There is no perfect model. Obviously, working together and having everybody in one place is great. When you need something answered right up, within a certain time frame or right away or response, it's easier to call somebody who's awake, or maybe, if nothing else, walk down to their office and talk to them, right, or their cubicle. But they don't have that advantage, especially because different studios worked on different aspects of the game. As you guys know, the different studios were also even broken up as far as the ship manufacturers who worked on Drake versus who worked on RSI were at different studios. So you could see where the hurdles would be. Like Brian said, sometimes it's 2 in the morning and he's getting an email with a request. And there are other times where he comes in the morning and stuff that they left off on the day before has been completed because some other studio wrapped it up. So there's good and bad to the whole thing. Hey, Eminence, good to see you. So anyway, you can see the pros and cons of a studio that is spread out all over the world. Some good, some bad. That's the model that they decided to go with. See number 3.
Daz writes, "Hi Brian, can you explain a bit about your process for creating the first procedural location and what look and feel you are aiming for?" I get asked a lot on the procedural plan, and rightfully so, because it's cool stuff, and I think we made some progress that people weren't expecting and kind of dumped it on people in that live stream, which was pretty awesome to do. The first procedural planet really had nothing to do with aesthetics. Hey, what were you trying to pull off aesthetically? Nothing, to be honest with you. It was just about proving tech. So textures were pulled in, of a certain memory footprint that we knew we would most likely have, and then the tech was just pushed until we got that up and running. After those first steps, then we had an environment artist 100% dedicated to working with all of the tech guys and engineers that were pushing on the procedural planets. They need to sort out the best approach on how to get rid of seams, how to make those non-existent, what limitations and parameters should or shouldn't be set, on and on and on. There's so much detail that's going into that. And that work is honestly right now, as of this moment, going on to some extent, but a huge progress is being made. We've already done tests with different types of geometry and different types of look and different type of atmospherics, to really see that we can come up with. One thing that was interesting is Pascal, our environment artist that was working on stuff, he'd been playing with this one planet. Now, mind you, it's huge. For a good amount of time, a couple weeks, I think. And there was one point he kind of made some noise, and some of the guys had come over and looked. He had actually seen something like a new formation that he hadn't seen, although he'd been looking at this thing for weeks. In getting to a new part, he had seen a new formation that looked really, really cool, but was completely unique to anything else he had seen over the last couple of weeks. And that's cool. That's telling us that the parameters there are working. It's keeping things new. It's keeping things random, but still staying within the guidelines that the tech is putting forward. War Dog.
Okay, let me stop there real quick. Yeah, it is pretty cool. Yeah. Um, some of you may not know or remember that procedural planets, or the idea of planets being not only procedural, but that we could land on them seamlessly, and that we could have different places where we could land, was on the agenda for Star Citizen, but it was also intended to be much, much later down the road. The original way, we've talked about this before, is that you're supposed to just fly to a planet. There would be like a little orbital station. You'd go there, and then you would just request a landing. And then after that, there would be a cinematic that you would fly you into whatever location you were going to. And we've seen this with other games that are out there. That was just the tech that was the fastest and easiest route to go. And then once you landed, you would get out of your ship and do whatever it is you wanted to do. Well, as the story goes, one of the developers at CIG took it upon themselves to work on the side and ended up creating the tech that allows us to be able to fly down to a planet on our own. And even then, it was supposed to be only fly within a certain parameter, right? There's going to be this like an invisible lane that you would have to fly down. That was going to be the next step that they thought. Once they got it, or if they got it where we could fly you down, it'll be between this little lane. You had to stay within certain parameters. But this tech allowed them to expand beyond that, which kind of pushed them forward leaps and bounds. And I'm sure it also changed some of the development, right? Because they weren't planning on doing that for some years later. And now they had the ability to be able to do that right away. So I'm sure this had an effect on development, and both, brought some cheers and also said, oh my God, now that we can do this, we got to change a lot of stuff around to be able to accommodate it, because we want to put it into the hands of players, because obviously it's a huge draw. The fact that seamless thing from remember the old Pupil to Planet video, that seamless being able to move down to a planet without any loading screens, admittedly, it drew a lot of attention from gamers, from those of us who support the game. We thought that was a huge leap. So that's what he was explaining about that. All right, let's go to the next question. Yeah, Lady Space Patrol, Starfield does something very similar to that, right? They pick a location and you go down, but there are other games that have done that. No Man's Sky did that, and basically in the beginning, it still does to a certain degree. There's a preload aspect to it, but they've improved on theirs even over time.
How will the definition of procedural planet generation work? Is it only a set of random seeds, or will an artist define where land and water is, and the algorithm seed will only define the shape of the coast and the land, mountains, river, etc.? Honestly, it's a bit of both. First we go, cool, what type of planet do we want? What are we generating? And then we'll obviously adjust the parameters based off of that planet for what we would like procedurally generated. At the same time, during the process, we can guide it as specific as we need. There's a lot of artist control over there, and I think that's essential, because we want people to come and have certain experiences on these planets. So not only can we define and create new parameters for each type of terrain or even each type of gameplay that's going to go in there, but then the artist can go through and have really fine level control. We want, in a sense, we want to focus more on the quality and then the quantity. You're going to have a tremendous amount of quantity, and I think you're going to have so much that you're really not going to see things repeat themselves, which is awesome. But at the same time, we know having that control of the artist to go through and fine tune stuff is extremely important, not only for look but also for gameplay. And then on top of that, we'll create tools for the artists on top of that. So now they're actually playing around with the procedurally generated terrain and so on, to really pull it together as efficiently as possible. Shrike or
Okay. So as you guys know, as I just mentioned earlier, originally the planets were all going to be kind of handcrafted. And again, there was going to be limited access to how you could get to those planets. But now that they could do the procedural planet thing. There's way more that they want to do. They can put in more parameters. They can add a lot of variety to the planets. But that's basically what he was talking about. Um, Procedural generation has the thing that they were really trying to be careful of is things not, as he mentioned, not looking repetitive, which is one of the reasons why CIG worked on tools for so long. Hey, Gladestone, good to see you. One of the reasons why tools was a big deal for them. Of course, it took a lot of time to develop the tools that CIG wanted to be able to make, particularly working within the engine that they were working on. That engine was evolving or not revolving. Well, CryEngine was changing. Let's just say it that way. CryEngine was morphing into something else, and obviously they had to be able to make tools that work within that so that the developers could work faster in the game. And we've seen some examples of that where they showed us when they put down bases. If you remember in the early days, bases looked a certain way. There were some issues with height maps and all types of stuff that they wanted to do. We don't think about a lot of the detail that CIG is trying to place into the game. Now, some things they've done has been about proof of concept, and we don't know if they're going to be in the final product, but they have showed us some of the things that they would like to do. For example, once terrain is laid, you would think that, well, terrain is laid, right? And you would think that there would be a base, let's say a small base that you want to put into an area, a landing zone, that goes in. And then after that, you've got things like the foliage and things of that nature that go in, and fauna and stuff like that. But we also know that CIG does the most, right? They do it even further than that. So they're creating these areas where we'll be able to have random encounters with NPCs. Those random encounters will be based upon our gameplay. So they're not just, things that just get triggered, but it may be based upon one time you go, something's there, you go another time, nothing's there, because they want that universe to feel alive and very different. There are things that they're building in, even in relation to temperature and climate and weather. These are not things that are just baked in, but they want them to be dynamic so that when weather happens in an area, it literally happens because of different temperature levels that happen to be in the game. If you're in the lower level valley, the temperature is one way. If you're up higher in the hills or the mountains, the temperature is another way. And the fact that there's wind blowing, that wind also creates certain weather patterns. I mean, there's a lot more stuff that's going into this than what goes into a normal game. And it's very easy to forget that. It's very easy to forget that. And these are the things that is why it's taking longer for this game to be developed more than other games, because Chris Roberts is going in 10 feet deep, not 3 feet deep when it comes to the development of this game. And it is you have to have some, let's just say you have some strong fortitude to be able to take this ride, because there's a lot that we know that they want to do, but we're still waiting to see whether it's going to be delivered. We've seen proof of concept. They've shown us the videos. They've shown us that they've been working on these things. Let's just hope that it'll all be worth it when it's all said and done. Okay, let's do the next one.
Shriek, don't know how to pronounce that, sorry. What technological challenges still remain before CIG is comfortable adding a procedural planet mechanic to one of our upcoming patches? I get that question a lot. Right now, we're in the process of incorporating what we have so far in the procedural technology into everything else. When we're proving out the tech and building it up and had Pascal working with guys, we had kind of in a very controlled area. We kind of needed to pull it away from everything else so we could just focus on it. Now that we've gotten it a bit more mature, now we're pulling it together with everything else. We're seeing really good progress on that, but then we need to see what blows up, what unknown or unforeseen issues have come up to address those, or have come up and then we need to address them. We know we knew there would be some issues already when we put it in, and we've already identified those, and it came true with what we thought, which is good because our logic made sense. So we've already are working on those, and then we'll churn through it. Once we get all that solid and sorted, so it's actually a good, decent play experience for you guys, then we think that's when it would be time to hand it over. Some of the stuff on the procedurals, it's been interesting for us working on it. There's a build with a couple of different procedural planets in there, and you're on one, you're there, you've taken off in your ship, you get up, you fly away. you know, 5 minutes of flying through space later, I see a distant planet. And then another 5 minutes to actually get there to get to that planet. Which was nuts. You just start flying and we're going as fast as we can and we're going, all right, cool, we got this. Hey, wait, wait. And we're just kind of sitting there tapping our feet and tapping our feet. So that's another thing that we're looking at is you have the distances, but we also need to make sure that it makes sense for the game. I guess you could say that the distances are there and so on. But that's for design and Chris and all those guys to sort out. Roog.
Some of this goes into this again, guys. Don't forget, this is in the early days when we were first getting planets and stuff like that. Yeah. Brian still works for CIG Gladestone. He still over in Germany, and he had actually taken over. He and Aaron Roberts, the company grew. They switched roles, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, Brian is now the one who's overseeing the development for Squadron 42, and Aaron is now overseeing the German offices, even though they're both over there. So yes, he does still work. In fact, he came to one of our virtual bar citizens, just not this last one, but the one before that one. He dropped in and hung out with us that night, and it was a lot of fun. It was late night. He had just come from a local bar citizen that was in Germany, I think, and it was late. I mean, I don't know what time it was for him, but I know it was probably like 2 a.m. if I'm remembering correctly. And he came and hung out with us. Yeah, we met him in 2016. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we did. Okay, so anyway, let's continue. Oh, I was thinking about the procedural thing. At the time, they were still mapping out the scale of the universe, and so here he's talking about when they were testing the procedural aspects, they would take off from a planet and leave, and then just start flying, and then 5 minutes later, they'd see a planet out. And I don't know if he's referring to a moon or not, but as you guys know, in the game, you can see different orbitals and stuff in the game. Like when you take off, if you like, I stay at R-Corp all the time, so I can literally see Lyria and Walla at the distance, which is great. But again, this had to be built out to scale. Eventually, CIG determined how big they wanted the universe to be, and they had to find the balance between what feels real and what's too quick. There are some games out there that they obviously are done for the sake of visual stuff. It looks cool. You go up and you see a certain planet or moon or things like that. But obviously, in the area of science, some stuff would not work just because of gravitational pulls and other things. But anyway, the CIG worked out their details for that. Let's see. Red Bear, thank you. Hey, Red Bear, thank you for that follow. Appreciate it. Let's go to the next one.
And he made note that I'm supposed to pronounce it like that. Cinematics and animation have played a big part in the Wing Commander series, but tend to be quite passive. Will we have a better blend of the player being in the room and simply have animated characters, or is it going to be MGS style, long cutscenes of little interaction? You'll have a good, honest mix of interaction with the cutscenes. You won't have these long, drawn-out cutscenes that are non-interactive all over the place. The cutscenes were designed, written, and shot in a way that give a large amount of different variety in how they play out. Some do take control fully away from the player, but for a very specific reason, if that makes sense. There's also a large amount that are fully interactive. And then there's hybrids that put the player in a defined path, but the player still have some sense of movement and sense of control. So I really do think once these all come together, you're going to get a whole good mix, and it's really going to feel fairly fluid and seamless. We also have added elements to the scenes where they branch, but branch in a very kind of relaxing, casual, sensible way. So the player has some choice, but it's not like, things pause and the AI roams until you push a button. So I think even with those, with the different interaction, it's kind of casual, and the mix, it's even going to make them feel a bit more fluid. Excitix, X-I-T-I-X.
Okie dokie. Let me go back. And just so you guys will know, just for the point of reference, that question really had more to do with Squadron 42. Excuse me. And basically the question was, will cinematics be in the game, and will they be like way drawn out and long, I wouldn't be able to interact with them. And Brian says that they're definitely avoiding making them long. There are some cinematics where we'll just sit there and watch what's going on. And then there are some where there'll be interaction involved. And we kind of saw this when we did the vertical slice for Squadron. There were some sequences that were based for the story that you kind of sat through and watched. And then there would be times where options would come up where you could respond. So that's typical in games, but they definitely said that they wanted to feel very much that we're a part of what's going on and not just kind of these long story pieces that are going on and on.
Even going to make them feel a bit more fluid. Excitix, X-I-T-I-X. I probably messed that one up. Since the Frankfurt studio is still growing, are there any plans to build a German customer service team there? Or if so, would it be placed in Manchester? Otherwise, which department in Frankfurt will grow in the future? There's been a bit, as you know, there's already a CS team in the UK.
Yeah,
I don't know how many people are there. I know there were more people last time I visited recently. All primarily English speaking. I think there's some other languages in there too, but I don't know them off the top of my head. There has been some early discussions, really early, of having native German speakers.
Hey, Wilbur.
Obviously, being here in Germany and interacting with the German fans, although there's a large amount of English that's spoken, things are always more, in my opinion, a little more comfortable in their native language. So, with such a large German community, and I know that the communities are large everywhere, but with such a large German community, that's where we've had those early discussions. That position could be here in Frankfurt, I think, which would make sense, because they could interact directly with people here too if needed. But it could also be in the UK and embedded with the other team. So, yeah, I mean, that's still to be seen. As far as Frankfurt studio and growing, I'd say in most departments we're still growing. We're still looking for a few more people for cutscenes. As an overview, we're helping to drive cutscenes. We have a large portion on design here, on producing weapons, on AI code, and with engine code. With weapons, we're fully sorted out as far as team size goes. And different departments are at a slightly different state, or various, right? We're getting pretty close to capacity. As I mentioned briefly, recently on an ATV, we are doing an expansion just so we can build out the rest of the team and everybody can fit here comfortably. But yeah, as a general overview, I mean, most disciplines we're hiring for, whether that's art, whether that's code, QA, etc. But we're doing pretty good filling up with what we need.
Again, this is when the studios were still building out. This is early 2014. Someone was asking about whether they would have a customer service area in Germany, and I'm sure that's because when they're trying to reach out to folks, and he was saying that when people write in because they have questions and stuff, I guess they just want to make sure if there was somebody in Germany who they would be able to connect with, because there was growth of the company. And I think, I'm not even sure if they have customer service spread out. And I don't know. He says that they're over in the UK, that there's an office where there's customer service, and he says people speak multiple languages there. I don't know if they divide up customer service between the UK and the US and Germany at this point. Maybe they do, since the company has grown so much, or maybe it's all hosted there in Manchester. I don't know. But it's an interesting question. Let's go on to the next one.
Also important to point out, I mean, we're not hiring people to hire people. We have a specific plan in place. We have a headcount plan based off of the work that's needed, based off of our dates and so on. So all of the hiring, all the planning, all of the expansion that we do in the building out of teams, it's all based on a very specific growth and schedule that we're doing, right? AI, so Stadulator. Hi, Brian. I'm very curious about where CIG is at with their AI. Any news for us? Nothing extremely new to report this second. I can say we're making good progress. AI is one of the bits that I try to give an update on, and I know it's fairly high level on the ATV every week, but I try to give an idea of what the guys are pushing on and what they're working on. Um,
Cryptic,
there is
thank you for
an
following.
overall large
Hola.
amount going on with AI right now, with subscription system and how we're making sure that things are set up today that are going to be best used for the future, right? Um, we need to take the time. It's in everybody's best interest to build as strong of a foundation as we can on things like AI, so that can set us up to handle things that we want to implement, um, in the next few months, the next 6 months, even ideas that we have that are, loose on paper that we would want to put in once the game's already out and mature, stuff that we'd still like to push on that we think would be cool for players. So we actually have here recently, it's coming up, not to date this video, but it's going to come up in the next few days, where I think we're going to have 9 different people out here to the Frankfurt office, including Tony from Austin and Chris and Sean Tracy, so on and so on and so on, a good amount of people from the UK, with a large amount of the discussion based on AI. So we know AI is important. We're making huge advancements. We're always adding new bits, but we're also taking the time to make sure, like I said, that we build that foundation as solid as we need to. Corrupt you for
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. AI has always been the bane for Star Citizen because people are so interested in seeing the NPC and PVE side of the game mature. And over the years, it has always been has become a meme in the sense of the AI in the game. One of the things I will say is that I will admit, I remember when they first introduced NPCs into the verse, and for the feeling of feeling that there's something there, and people have always said, well, why do they put the NPCs in the game? Why don't they just leave them out until they're fixed? And I know that there's a reason why they're there, a technical reason why they're there. One of them is, I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience before. Maybe you have. Have you ever had an instance where you've gotten into a server that is running at a very good peak? What I mean by anything from, let's say, 20 FPS to 30 FPS. The other day, I was doing testing, and as you guys know, a lot of people are playing Starfield, which is awesome because it gets people something to do, gets their mind away from the project a little bit so they're not so deeply immersed. But going into the servers the last few days have been challenging, particularly doing something as simple as bunker missions. If you've ever done any of the NPC or the FPS missions when the population is low and when the server numbers are high, the AI are incredibly good. They're very good. Many of the things that we've heard about in theory, such as hiding, working in a tactical way, firing over the top of their heads, running and taking cover. All those things happen when we have high server tick ratings and when there are not a lot of people populating a server. If you get the servers down to 10 frames or less, you start to see the lagging, you start to see the standing on seats, you start to see all the weird things that have popped up. And over the years, we've slowly watched that change. It's not there yet. But we do get those glimpses when you get into a server that's low popped and you can get in and have a challenging time. I went in a few days ago with a friend of mine and feeling very confident, but didn't remember that the server only had about 23 people in it, and stuck my head around the corner for 2 seconds and got popped. And then 4 guards came running up and popped my friend, and we were both laying there calling for a medical beacon. There are other times you go in and you can literally walk up to the people and wave in their face and kill them, right? And nothing happens. So AI is just a long time coming. Let's hope that CitizenCon this year, we're going to finally hear something very positive about it. As we know, a lot of this is still tied into what's going on with not just the development of quantum, but also the server tech information and stuff like that, server meshing and things like that. So anyway, that's it on AI. Let's keep going.
that foundation as solid as we need to. Corrupt you for fun one. Brian, is building the weapons for the game something that gets prioritized and therefore built faster in order to get it into a specific patch over building it over the course of time, and when it's ready, it's put in then? As in a lot of the things that I'm answering, honestly, it's a bit of both. Um,
Yeah,
we
I
know what
get it, lady.
ships
You're right,
and
lady. Space
weapons
Patrol.
will be
You'll be
released,
understanding. Hey, yo,
and
yo.
we know what new releases they'll be in or what new patches and so on. So we do our best to line those schedules up, right? You obviously, if we're going to put a ship out, you want to try to get a weapon functioning on it, or as many or all of them if you can.
Yeah, Lady
Sometimes the
Space Patrol.
ships
This is
move a little faster in
2014.
production.
2014.
Sometimes the weapons move a little faster in production. But we do our best we can to line those up to give it the best experience. Um, Internally, we have a good amount of weapons that we're working on. We have 4 full-time weapons artists. We have our lead, and then 3 other guys that are helping him out. So there's stuff that's coming out of them on a daily and weekly basis. Again, making good progress.
It's always interesting to see like different people come to Star Citizen asking about different things. Some people are asking about AI and looking for what type of NPC, things will be happening in the game. Here's a person who just asks exclusively about weapons, because they're probably looking forward to PvP or FPS. And it's going to be, another thing that's interesting for me is trying to build balance in a game. I know Gladestone said earlier that he was taking a break from Starfield, and I've been watching the reviews for Starfield, both good and bad. And it's interesting where people have mentioned where the strong points are with Starfield and where the weaker points of the game are, and that's probably in every game. Very difficult to find the game that strikes that balance for people who want to do FPS and people who want to do farming. People who want to do trading versus people who want to do mercenary stuff. And CIG is actually trying to do that with this. This game is, it's almost, to me, if I had to equate it to something, it's like a gumbo, where there's like a bunch of different things that you can like. And, you can like the sausage, or you can like the sauce, or you can like the shrimp. I mean, there's all these different things that are in there in some type of balance. And that's a difficult thing for a game to do because games are trying to reach, first of all, as many people as possible, satisfy as many tastes, pardon the expression, as possible, but also do them well. And usually there's something that suffers, something doesn't get the attention that people may want. And so maybe a game leans toward being called a certain type of game because of its strengths and not because it's open enough that anybody could come to the game and play it. Eve was a game like that for me. Eve offered various careers and things that you could do, but unfortunately, everything in Eve was based around PvP. Almost everything. It was very little things you could do where PvP either wasn't a part of it or didn't enter into it. Even something as simple as mining, um, PvP was always like in the back of your head. And so being able to find balance like that is a very difficult thing, I think, for any type of game. Lady Spectre Troll, think I'm alone in feeling fatigued with with their information. Do not require more pretty pictures of pyro, more explanations of server meshing and promises. Yeah, Lady Paper Space Troll. I think everybody's at that place. I think that one of the things that people are saying about this particular Citizen Con is we don't want any more demos. We don't want any more theoretical speaking of what we would like to do, but that we want something tangible and that's in our hands. And one of the reasons why we're going back, and maybe you weren't here at the beginning, Lady Space Patrol, I mentioned that I'm doing this because there are a lot of people who never saw these episodes and don't know what CIG's groundwork vision was for the game. And so I'm going back to talk about these to say where this is where they started. Have they achieved it? Are we halfway there, a quarter of the way there? Are we all the way there? Have they delivered? Some of the ones we've watched in previous episodes, we've seen where many of the things they've talked about, they have done and delivered. And there are also a lot of things still out there that they have yet to get to or for us to see in the game. What would satisfy our desires for SitCon this year? I'm honestly not even sure what I need. Yeah. And it's going to be different for everybody, right? I mean, I've said this on previous shows that I think there are 4 or 5 areas that are crucial for CIG to show some serious movement in. One of them is server meshing. The second one is Pyro. The third one is what is 4.0 going to look like, because it's a milestone in development. Or those of us who were around for 3.0, remember that was a huge leap. And so what will 4.0 look like? Population increase. Population increase in the servers, right? Because even if we do get another system like Pyro, what is our next leap? Because otherwise it's going to feel like more vacant, more empty space, a lot of stuff out there, but nobody's out there with us, right? And then quantum, the development of quantum and economy. Those areas are all crucial for us to feel like there's some major progress happening in the game. And again, we're not just talking about a demonstration of what they're talking about visionary wise, but actually it being implemented into the game in a bigger scale. Population to me is really important. I know for some people that may not seem like a big deal. But the reason why it feels big to me is because if we do expand, we know that they do want to expand into another system. We do want to see them, put in, I think like a couple of the last big tests were like 200 people, right? 200 people or more that they did that ran fairly well from what I've heard. What I'm hoping is that we're like anywhere like 500 people in a server. That's what I would love to see, 250 to 500 people. But again, progress is different for everybody. Some people want the quantum stuff to kick in, because if quantum kicks in, then we can start getting into the whole thing with the economy system being built in. Some people want, they want the server meshing. Server meshing allows for, even though Pyro could still maybe come in, it definitely allows for us to start expanding the different verses, right? So yeah, we do want to see a lot of these other things start to come in. And I think that I think at this point, I think they got their ear to the ground and know that the community want, especially because this is the first time we've coming back together. If there was ever a great time to do it, I think this is going to be the time to do it. If you go way back, you see the feature creep people talk about it's not that much. Yes. Yeah, and that is another factor, Red Bear. Yeah, a lot of times people think that things were feature creep, but CIG did talk about a lot of stuff. These years were between 2013 and 2015 for 10 for the chairman. There was a lot of stuff that they outlined, and unless people went back and looked at it, it would be very easy for people to think that certain things that have popped up were feature creep when they really were not. We don't need Nix. We need more info on Pyro. Well, Nix isn't going to happen before Pyro, Gladestone. I can tell you that. We do want Nix though. Nix is coming. They've talked about Nix being the next system. So I think when Eminence says he wants Nix, it's because Nix has some things to it that Pyro doesn't have. Nix has more actually to deal with than Pyro does. So I can understand why he's asking about Nix. Nix is also a much bigger system. Pyro is 2.5 times bigger than Stanton. Nix is 5 times bigger. It's much bigger. So yeah, they're both coming. Nix Magnus. Yep. All you gotta do is kind of follow the map and see where different systems that connect, and you can kind of see where things are going. Let's get to this one next week. Usually these shows are only like 15 minutes long. This one's like 35 minutes long. Brian's doing a lot of talking.
Floppy Donkey. Considering Squadron 42 will be story-driven, how much, if any, of the procedural world's tech can we expect in the single-player campaign? For that, we're honestly still sorting it out. And I'll try to explain. Cid's Squadron is primarily linear, and it's got a defined experience, but sometimes it's loose based off players' actions and so on. Procedural planets aren't absolutely necessary, right? At the same time, everything's on the same code base, so we have those in there, and we have them functioning. Meaning we have the tech functioning the way that it needs to, which it will be. Could we use it so we can pull things together more efficiently? Absolutely. But I don't think it would be something, and I could be wrong, but my guess would be it wouldn't be that when you go back in, you're going to have a different experience or see different terrain. It would just be used to set the defined terrain at that point. Typhy.
Okay. So that makes sense, guys. They're going to be doing way more. I mean, the procedural side might be for visual aspects, but because the game is linear, the places that we go will be definitely much more. The variety of. First of all, there's only certain systems in the game, so it's not like they have to create the 100 systems that Chris has talked about in the past. There's only going to be certain systems that are available in the game. You're only going to go to those systems, and that's it. In Squadron 42, when you come into the universe, the persistent universe, the PU, Star Citizen, that's where you have access to all the other stuff. Okay.
Terrain at that point. Typhy or Tiffy. Hey, Brian Chambers. This has been a question alongside the whole community, at least on Reddit, for a while. With new APIs becoming the standards in the future, DX12 and Vulkan, I wonder what CIG's approach is on this topic. We want a future-proof game which has the best of the very best graphics. In our eyes, this can only be done with early integration of DX12/Vulkan so that you know what the limits are of the new technology and that you can build around that. Guaranteed they were also interested in future-proofing, that the tech directors are setting things up correctly. This one, I actually, because I wanted to get you guys a solid answer. A lot of the tech guys, like I said before, they're really not interested in getting on camera, but they will write stuff up for me if I ask and explain. They totally dig the community. They're just not fans of being on camera. So I asked one of our tech directors, Mr. Carson Wenzel, and he actually wrote me up some stuff. So I'm going to sit here and actually read
Thank you for
this.
the follow.
So if I'm not looking at the camera, I am reading it from paper. So his response, we're actively looking into adopting new graphics APIs. As you know, DX12 and Vulkan differ quite significantly from previous API designs such as DX11 and OpenGL 4.5. They try to map very closely to current graphics hardware architecture as well as provide applications more low-level control of video memory. In order to take advantage, or full advantage of them, we started a massive refactor of the render and 3D engine in order to more efficiently prepare and submit items to be drawn well beyond the scope of the recent massively instanced rendering optimization done by us. Think of a departure from a monolithic render thread to more lightweight jobs that prepare individual render passes in parallel via the job system. The hope is that this will allow us more flexibility in terms of draw calls in a lot of areas without complicated runtime merging of materials and meshes or tedious offline optimization passes on content creation side, for example, such as character attachments. This refactor will lay the foundation for all future rendering and graphics work. On top of that, we'll be reworking the shader system and resource management to better map those new APIs and take advantage of new features exposed by the new APIs and shader languages. Especially memory management is going to be a fairly complex matter and far more trivial but crucial in order to get the best performance. Don't underestimate the support work video drivers do on DX11 and OpenGL. Additionally, we'll embrace asynchronous compute, taking advantage of the heterogeneous multi-GPU setups. Onboard plus discrete GPU is another possibility that might yield extra gains. That is, instead of alternate frame rendering, each GPU works on different tasks for a given frame. This needs some initial research first, though, to see how it can work and if the performance gains are actually worth the effort that they put into it. In summary, we agree that adopting these APIs is going to be essential moving forward, but at the same time, we want to take our time to get stuff done properly so you'll actually see a benefit over DX11 visually and in terms of performance. So the answer, yes, we're absolutely concerned with future-proofing. I wanted to be able to read that, and although I probably messed up pronunciation a little bit, you know, the guys that are working on stuff, they know their stuff. We want to set this up in the right way that we know it's going to be able to milk everything we can, that we get the best performance, that we can support the best hardware, and so on. So the guys are really taking their time and putting their energy and their big brain tech sweat into getting this where it needs to be. Mr.
Okay, so that's a good point. I mean, we know that DX12 and Vulkan have been the issue. DX12 is there. Vulkan is their next one. We just talked about that, about some of the things that we're expecting to see getting launched fairly soon. You know, building the game out so that This was just recently a game that was. Oh, I know what it was. It was Baldur's Gate. Um, as you guys know, Baldur's Gate is out. People are playing it. People are enjoying it. But there were some performance issues in relation to even there. I think at the very beginning of the game, they ask you, do you want to use DX12 or Vulcan? And my understanding is there were some people who were using the Vulcan side of it, and there were still some issues or performance problems. But we know the potential of Vulcan. And so, yeah, it's been 10 years or 9 years since this conversation. And, CIG has had to build out the game so these other APIs, even 9 years ago, they saw the future of where the game was going to be going. And they want us to be able to take advantage of these APIs. So let's hope again, CitizenCon, we get the update and that they're going to launch it because Vulcan is supposed to be one of those things that's implemented that will definitely have impact on different people's computers and performance will be better for those of us who are using it. So I definitely want better performance. My frame rates only go so far. It'd be nice to know that if they implement it, I could get a little bit better performance. But my performance is pretty good. I'm not going to complain about my performance. I don't. It doesn't get that bad for me. But I know there are some people that would definitely benefit if Vulkan gets implemented into Star Citizen.
Cole asks, thanks for stepping up the plate yet again to answer our questions. Compared to your early work with animation and motion capture for Roughneck Starship Troopers Chronicles, how has the technology advanced in the last few decades, and are there any drawbacks compared to the earlier methods? Tech's made huge steps since I first started. I mean, tech's made huge steps in the last few years. When I did the work on the initial season of Roughnecks, optical mocap wasn't even really used in production. I think you had some of the larger like film effects companies using it, but I don't think any smaller houses or games were at all. At that point, we had a magnetic system, Flock of Birds, I think it was called. Stage side was limited to 12 by 12, 12 feet by 12 feet. It was supposed to be wireless, but it would send these wireless data packets, and occasionally the data packets would drop, which would make the motion just completely blow up or freeze. So a lot of times we actually had to run tethered. So you had somebody in these funky suits with all these gyros on them. And then even on the software side, there was a lot of scripting to get stuff to work, mapping something, the actual motion to a character. It'd take a full day to set up a character and get that running, where now you can do it in a couple clicks. But back in the day when we finished stuff and we looked at it, I mean, we were so proud seeing characters moving in the environment. When I go back and look at those nowadays, you can see the high frequency noise. I kind of cringe. You can see the high frequency noise in the animation. You can see floaty feet. Contact isn't really there where it needs to be. But that was the day, and for the time of what we did, I think it was really cool. Today you have huge volumes. You're capturing numerous people at once. You're capturing body. You're capturing face. You're capturing fingers. We're recording audio. We're tracking props, huge volumes if we want to use them. The software also is leaps and leaps and bounds. Almost to a point to say, the kids nowadays have it easy, right? But yeah, it's true. I mean, back in the day, it was a lot more archaic, but it was still incredibly new and exciting back then, just as the new stuff that's coming online now is. So it's cool. Kaji are
Okay. So basically, he said that animations from when he got started have jumped leaps and bounds over the years. Much more stuff out there that they can do. He says he looked back at his old work. It's like anybody else, right? When you like, if you ever uh, uh, wrote something, or did a performance of something, and you go back and look at your earlier stuff that you thought was so great. He said he cringes now when he looks at his earlier work, but there's definitely been advances in animation for computers and stuff, so we know that already. Here we go.
Raquel asks, Uncharted 4 placed the level so high in terms of quality, animation, lighting, level of details, even in large open area, content streaming, etc., and on a PS4. a hardware which CR clearly stated in the past that Star Citizen could not run. Does that change the team's mind and the power console can have? And can we expect that you at least reconsider a console release in the long term? On a technical point of view, I mean. Uncharted 4 looks awesome. I think it was the day or so after it came out, we grabbed it and had it here in the studio. And I told the team, hey, let's go in the kitchen and talk to Chris about it and so on. So when I say kitchen, we had a couch in there with a console. So we all went in there and were playing it. They did an awesome job. Looks good. It plays nice. Generally in console development, and I can just say this from experience, the games look nicer the longer the console exists. You understand how to use the hardware better. You understand how to go around or through or above or under the limitations that the hardware gives you. You find new tips and new tricks on how to put things together, manage memory, stream things, so on and so on and so on. So as you can see, if you look historically, even PS2 and so on, late generation PS2 games looked awesome comparatively, right? And it's just because people got more mature in how that they could use the hardware. But with that said, there's still a ceiling. There's still a ceiling on that hardware of what's possible. You have technical limitations. If you apply those same learnings and that same logic to a piece of hardware that has a higher ceiling, in theory, you would be able to produce more or do things better or do things more fluid. It doesn't necessarily mean that it would look better. It was really what you're after, right? If Uncharted 4 looked great and it was based on a certain hardware and we had harder hardware, could you draw more characters on screen? Could you put a little more love into the atmospherics? Could you have more on hair cloth animation? Just all those as examples, right? So yeah, I think the team over there did an awesome job pulling it off. It looks amazing. Yet that doesn't point directly that that means Star Citizen could run on it, right? As far as hey, would you consider it in the future? Not even a point really to think about right now, or for us to put energy on, because the team's fully focused on delivering Star Citizen and Squadron 42 on PC, like we promised, to the community, to the backers, to the fans, and so on. So that's really where all of our energy is. So
that's an interesting point. There's always been this question of will CIG ever produce anything on PC? In the early days, I'm not PC console. In the early days, obviously, we're talking about in 2014, consoles were booming back then. They still are, but they were really booming back then. And the PC had basically taken second seat to console. So players were definitely still interested to see whether or not Star Citizen would eventually transfer over to console. And just recently, Chris and Sandy were over in Asia doing a Star Citizen and asked that question. And when I asked that question, Sandy asked the question, would you all want to see something on console? And the place went crazy, right? I don't know if they went crazy because they were like, what are you talking about? Or whether they went crazy because like, yeah, we want it on console too. It sounded like more of a positive scream than a negative. But there was definitely some mixed feelings about hearing that. But I've always felt that CIG could move into consoles, but after their promise of delivery of Star Citizen. I'm not saying Star Citizen can go on console. Maybe Squadron, maybe Arena Commander, something like that, which would be a great FPS place for people to go and play. But I think that they got to keep Star Citizen itself and the Squadron franchise as their priority. And for PC, I think that's it. Because you guys know, once you start going to console, compromises start kicking in. And usually it's on the PC end so that consoles can work. And we've seen that with other games where a lot of the major AAA companies have tried to launch into doing both platforms and, something suffers, basically. We saw it happen with Elite Dangerous. We saw it happen with Cyberpunk 2047, 2099, whatever it is. Cyberpunk. Where companies have attempted to try to do those two platforms, and it's very, very difficult to do. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think their priority is definitely PC.
I'm going to grab a bunch of these, last some, maybe another 10. and answer with one word. I already kind of sorted the ones I
He's
could
giving us a
answer with
20
one
for the
word.
chairman. Here we
So
go.
this will be Brian's fire round. Leonard Sapala. In ATV weekly updates, you're well known for saying a lot without actually giving anything away. Thanks, Leonard. Really appreciate that. He also goes on to ask, any updates on VR/head tracking support? Nope. Silo Torn. Brian, can you talk about current plans for spinning motions of planets and
Hey, Wilbur.
moons? Will they have realistic spin or will they all stand still? Realistic. Argorn BH. He had a bunch of questions. This one's question number 5. How is the expansion of the Frankfurt facilities going? And have office space limitation prevented you from hiring new people? Good and nope. Loric Eternis
Thanks, Wilbur.
asks, I've been wondering for a very long time, how do you take care of that luxurious hair? Magic. Deathstrike asks, in the first procedural video, it was somewhat easy to recognize where procedural planet met the handcrafted landing area. Regarding the blending and hiding of those areas, would it be more of an automatic or manual process? Both. Sower or Saver writes, if a railgun fired from an Idris and Soul, might a prospector hull be breached in Orion? Nope. LMAC asks, are there any innovative technologies or gameplay systems being researched/worked on currently that haven't been heard about yet, but you really need to share with us that will have a major impact on the game if they can be made to work? Yes. The Hound asks, about animations, are the get in and out of pilot seats settled for every seat, or are they meant to evolve? Evolve. And to final it off, Kaji Arkel asks, hey Brian, which shampoo do you use to keep your hair so nice? Magic. Thanks for sitting through this the last 35 minutes. Appreciate it. We at Frankfurt appreciate all the support. Appreciate the support for the game, for all the studios. It's fun talking with you guys and doing this when we have the time. So thanks again. And if I did an okay job, maybe they'll ask me to do it again. Cool. Take care.
Okay, that's Brian Chambers, guys. I was looking up Brian's resume of work, and Brian evidently started back in 2001. At least this is what he has posted for his resume. He was an animator and senior mocap operator back then. He went from that to being a freelance animator. Then he started working for Shiny Entertainment, where he was the lead cinematic artist and animator. After that, he went to Rockstar. Worked at Rockstar in San Diego. He was the animation director there. From there, he went to Concrete Games with THQ. You guys remember the game developer THQ? He was there. Then in 2012, he was working at Crytek. He was senior producer at Crytek, which we know that was one of the reasons why Chris got him to come over to Cloud Imperium because of them using the Cry engine. And then after that, for the last 8 years and 9 months, he has been at Cloud Imperium Games. So there you go. That's it. All right. That's episode 13. That was a long one, but it was interesting. And I always love when we get to hear from the other devs. Hearing from Chris is great, but I always love when we get to hear from Sean Tracy or Brian, any of the lead, the head honchos over there, over the different places. Aaron, I love when we get to hear from them. Let's jump right into episode number 14. This is another 10 for the devs. Again, this is supposed to be 10 for the chairman. We know that, but you know what? Wait, let me see something here. Did I do the wrong episode? I did the wrong episode. I did 10 for the developers. I forgot there was the 10 for the developers series. So let me do, let me see something here, gang. That's why that was off. Let me go back to 10 for the chairman. Jeez, oh Pete. How did I miss that? Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to go back and do episode We're supposed to be doing what, 13, 14, and 15? All right, I'm going to do 13, 14. Yeah, let me do episode 13 and 14 for 10 for the chairman. Because I don't want this to become a 10 for the dev show. Because that was going to be separate. I don't know how I missed that. All right, let's go back and do that anyway. We're going to do that. Episode 13, 10 for the chairman. Okay? Chris Roberts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of.
By the way, have you guys noticed that Chris's eyes are always red in the morning when these happen? You could tell that they shot these first thing in the morning. Probably also because the studio was quieter before folks got into work and everything. Because once his day started, he doesn't have time. I'm sure to be doing these things. They probably got him up early in the morning. His hair is kind of like he just got out of bed too most of the time. So, God bless Chris for getting up in the morning to do these.
If you haven't watched it before, this is where I take 10 questions from our subscribers in general and try and answer them as best I can. For those of you that don't know, the subscribers are the portion of our community that kick in a little extra money every month that allow us to do a lot more community content. This show, Women's Hangar, Jump Point, which even though subscribers get first, eventually a lot of the articles and background information that we have in Jump Point, which is 50, 60 pages each month, which is pretty impressive magazine size, trickle down to the community as a whole. So this is our way of giving back to the subscribers a little bit and saying thank you for enabling us to do all this. I'll get right to it. The first question of the 10 comes from Slackar. In the dogfight module, where is our hangar located? Are we already in space on a station? If so, how do we get the ship out of the hangar without creating a vacuum? That is a good question, but the concept with the dogfight module is actually that you're flying essentially a simulation inside your hangar. So what will happen is you will be in the hangar, you'll get inside your Hornet or any of the ships that we'll have available for Dogfight V1. And if you don't have any of those ships, we'll give you a loaner ship to fly in Dogfight V1. But you'll climb in and you basically fire it up, and at that point your HUD comes up and creates a sort of joining a simulation interface. So we've mentioned arena mode as a part of the game where it allows you to practice flying around, fighting with your friends, but not taking your actual ship out into space and risking loss of equipment or life. And so that is what we're calling Arena Commander, and it's a bit of a nod to a game I may have made in the past. But you sort of connect up with there, and it's all done in fiction that you're connecting up to a battle net, and you will fight against other people. So what happens is you step into the ship in your hangar, connect up, and then sort of the outside of the ship, once you've connected, you come back out, and bam, you're now out in a virtual space flying around dogfighting. And once you've finished the battle, you return to your hangar, you'll be back in your hangar. And of course, there won't be any bullet holes on your hangar because it was all a virtual simulation. But it is the beginning of the stub of the arena mode that will be in the game, which will be throughout the game. So it's kind of one of the features that will be useful, and I think longer term people would probably use this feature to sort of, do esports or challenge each other without having to, lose, their precious cargo or precious ship. So we don't have to worry about a vacuum at the moment because it's all virtual.
Okay, so you guys, some of you may remember that this is how we used to get into Arena Commander. You would get into your ship cockpit, and then you click on this button, and then the Arena Commander thing would come up, and then you would go into the space. The proof of concept for that also was done with the sim pods. We talked about this on Soul Citizens. The sim pods that you guys know, they have them over at the Frontline store over in New Babbage down in the basement, the lower level. Those big circular things that you can go in, and those were also in our hangars at one point. It wasn't like that. It was designed a little bit different. It was smaller, but you used to be able to get in that and do it as well. And that was kind of proof of concept of that idea. So those sim pods that are in Star Citizen now are there so that you can purchase them later and put them on your ship or in your home or whatever, I guess. And that will be your way to be able to step into simulations. So if you want to practice dogfighting, competitions, things of that nature, you'll be able to do that in game. And the idea is that everything will be in game, not where you have, like right now, we've got the menu for going to Arena Commander. That's not what the ultimate thing is. It's all just there for us right now. but the idea is that all of that will be done from within the game once you go inside. Okay.
So the next question comes from Kalashnikov, who asks, given all the focus on Oculus Rift, will similar time be given to technologies like Track AR and Cast AR? Do you expect basic head tracking functions to be available for the dogfighting module? So we've already announced that we're going to be supporting Track AR, so that's definitely on our list. Cast AR, I'd have to take a look at because we haven't announced support for it necessarily at the moment, but if something's cool, I mean, we're pretty peripheral agnostic. We want to support a lot of different options, whether it's HOTAS outfits or keyboard, mouse, gamepad, regular joystick, Oculus Rift, Track AR, rudder pedals. So that's part of the spirit of PC gaming. So CryEngine's actually quite good at having a lot of different input stuff. So you can, in the dogfight module, when you'll play, you'll be able to have your HOTAS set up and a mouse and a keyboard and all the rest, and all be flying it all, using all at the same time if you want. So we'll do that. As far as the head tracking functions for the dogfighting module, I'm not sure about dogfighting V1. We'll probably try to have the Rift be working for it because we already have the Rift working in the Hangar, but we're really trying to do some extra stuff on the Rift to have proper stereoscopic dual rendering as opposed to sort of a post-stereoscopic rendering. And there's still some head lag issues that we're dealing with. We've made it better, but there's some we're dealing with that are down at the engine level that we're sort of working a little bit with Crytek on. But I don't think we'd have Track AR and stuff ready for the Dogfight V1, but that is definitely on our list of stuff to work on and stuff to do, so that you could see that coming in along the line when we start to patch stuff. Okay, so
you guys know Track IR is in the game. They've moved Track IR. They've got Toby in. There's also their general head tracking that's in the game that they put in. At one point, you guys maybe even remember CIG was looking at a certain camera that was going to be built, and then they beat that without having to come up with its own hardware to do it. They made it so that your regular webcam can do tracking. So we've got that with all those, the facial thing, also the FOIP. So they've, on a software level, they've expanded that and taken it even further. But this definitely wasn't being implemented in the beginning. And VR has been tabled. You guys already know that. VR was a big thing that people kept talking about in the early days. They were proof of concepting it and testing it in early days. In Arena Commander, there was a little bit in there for a little while that people were doing. Some people actually still stream it once in a blue moon. But they have definitely said, we're interested in it, but it is not the priority. We'll deal with it later. Okay.
Next question comes from Jomanda, who asks, what do you envision the end game to be for the industry side of the game? Especially for players that are more focused on that aspect. Well, I mean, first of all, I hope there isn't any particular end game in Star Citizen. I mean, I don't think people think there's a necessary end game in EVE. Maybe it's running your corporation, but then there's always someone trying to take your spot or push you off that top perch, which is pretty much the way I think Star Citizen would work. So, I mean, I think if you're into sort of the economy side and you want to be sort of more a entrepreneur and build up businesses or industries, that's really going to be around, buying and owning like a production node, which essentially is kind of a factory, and then running that in terms of making sure that you're getting the right raw materials and you're doing well, and then perhaps you can expand and maybe you can buy another production node somewhere else and sort of build up your own economic empire. And in that case, I think you would probably be spending a fair amount of time sort of managing the resources and hiring other people to do a lot of the sort of legwork, like bring cargo from A to B and have people to defend it and all that sort of stuff. So I would say that would be sort of the high level game if you were more interested in that level of the game versus just the flying around combat side. Next question comes from...
Now that's interesting. That's interesting. I don't remember hearing this before. I've watched these so long ago, but maybe I'm getting older, so maybe I just forgot. But he talked about later on that there may be some high level point of you actually running a production facility, called it a production node, but basically he said you could do that. Now, this does kind of make sense to a certain degree. When they have showed us some of the props that they've been working on for settlements and stuff like that, some of the props that they've had in there, I've kind of wondered about them. Some of them were like refueling depots. Some of them were solar energy things. Some were communication. And I always looked at it as just, oh, that'll be cool for like a base for an org or something. But CIG has talked about, or Tony Z in particular, has talked about the economy functioning around industry and having missions where you have to go places to do mining, that resources will come and go. They'll be there for a while, then they'll disappear. And so I am curious to see if what Chris is envisioning, mind you, he's envisioning, y'all, we don't have it. But the idea of actually people being able to manufacture, having factories where raw materials are brought out and we're producing. We do know that CIG is the plan to implement crafting. We've gotten the first tier 0 of crafting with the multi-tool, and now they've gone beyond the multi-tool to the what's it called? The SMT. What's that thing called? The little thing that makes the raw material, the RMT, whatever it's called, for doing repairs on ships. That they're starting this thing with being able to make things. So if it gets to the scale where you can actually own as he calls it, a production node or factory, whatever, producing something, we know that the Pioneer has a form of manufacturing going on for bases. But will we be able to actually do some level of taking resources and making something? That would be interesting if that's down the road. But we'll see.
From Elijah Zulus Parsons, who asks, will I be able to set pilots organization's aggression status like red/foe, orange/pirate, green/friendly, gray/neutral, blue/friend, etc., in relation to myself, my organization? The game tracks all the relationships between the organizations, either the game-defined ones, which would be the sort of NPC ones, or the player ones, and it tracks whether you're friendly or you're not friendly, and all of that sort of will translate into, when you're flying around, in your radar, you'll sort of see the friendlies, like the default would be friendlies would be green and a hostile would be red. So that all sort of, the status of relationships between organizations, whether it's NPC or player, is mapped to friendly, not friendly, neutral, all that kind of stuff, and that maps to colors that are in your HUD. So I think it's automatically handled would be the best way to say it. I mean, you can, of course, in your organization say, I'm not friendly with this organization, and then, of course, when you see them, they will come up as enemies or hostiles to you. So I guess to that level, you could potentially set the aggression status. Okay, so the next question.
Here's one that's definitely what goes in line with what was called Org 2.0, the organizational tools that orgs have been looking for quite a while. I was just having a conversation with Montoya a month ago or something about this, because he really wanted to, he felt that basically the organization tools have been neglected for quite a while, which is true. We haven't really heard anything about org tools. And we've got all these orgs all over the place, and there's nothing to organize. If you run an org, there's no real tools to organize them in gameplay. The most you have is a friends list. There are some cool new things that they've implemented in Arena Commander that do tie into friends lists, where you can see who your friends are when you want to join up and do things. But we do want something that allows us to do some type of organizational structuring and things like that in game, as well as, in relation to other orgs too. So hopefully they'll end up putting up something like that. It would be kind of cool if they did.
Question comes from Shogun, who asks, will the Mustang and other ships not yet available for pledge be made available before the alpha? It looks pretty cool, and I would like to add one alongside my Aurora LN and Cutlass. We are working on all the ships that we've announced at some level. So some are in the concept stage, some are in the modeling stage, but there's a lot of work happening. We've got a lot of artists, but there's even more work than we've got artists, and also for the dogfight, there's a lot of extra sort of work that comes into building all the different damage parts and models of the ships and LODs, which you don't necessarily see the benefit of until, say, you're in the dogfight. And so there's a fair amount of our artists that are focused on that. But the idea is, as these ships get built and put in the engine, then we'll make them available in the hangar, and then you can fly them. And then when they're available in the hangar, the concept would be that you should be able to, have them and put them in your, you'll be able to pledge for it and put it in your hangar. And then also, once we have all the damage states and the LODs, you can do the you'll be able to fight with them in the dogfight module. So I would say that they will probably be available before the game is finished, definitely. Probably not by Dogfight V1, but sometime thereafter. Anyway, so the Mustang we are working on right now. So next,
just think, back in the early days, we were excited about getting the Mustang. So he had a Cutlass and an Aurora LN, but Mustang was still in concept. He's wondering whether or not it would be able to go into the Arena Commander. So we know that a lot of the ships are available now, but for quite a while, there were only certain ships that were available to go into Arena Commander. I think like in the beginning, like only maybe 4 or 5, and it had been added over time.
Next question comes from Garosian, who asks, if I happen across some cargo that has fallen off the back of a freelancer, is it fair game to any who can pick it up, or is it considered stolen merchandise, be automatically identifiable by the authorities and other players? So that's a good question. We've actually had a debate about that because we're in the process of fleshing out the cargo system. So that would be like kind of what the standardized sizes of the cargo are, how you get the cargo load your ship, how you unload it, how you're able to dump it in space. If, say, a pirate's like, give me your cargo or else I kill you, how are you able to bring cargo in from space back into your hold? So we've sort of been working on all those aspects. It's pretty cool design stuff. One of the things we were talking about was you could have a fancier sort of basic cargo container. So think of our basic cargo containers as like containers in the real world right now. So like if you see like, that gets put on trains or container ships or trucks, drive around. Normally, like, say, everyone makes a bunch of TVs in, I don't know, South Korea, and they pack them up and put them in this big container, and then the container gets taken by truck to the train station. The train station takes it to the boat, puts it on, the boat comes across here to America, they unload it, and then it gets put back onto a train, and then goes to a local distribution center, and then goes out in a truck, and then it's in Best Buy or wherever your electronics store, or Amazon delivers it to you. So, we have the same concept of containers, just because it's simpler to have uniform sizes, and then there can be bigger ones and smaller ones, but they all sort of have volumes that are defined that our holds are built for. And the fancier one, so if you want to invest in like a more expensive container, we were considering having sort of like tracking, like LoJack on it or something. But most of them won't have that. So most of them, if the cargo is floating out in space and you come across it and take it in, then it's sort of kind of at that point it's finders keepers unless it's sort of marked. Obviously, if you were the person that forced the cargo to be in space by illegal pirate attack and you're in well-regulated or policed areas, and someone saw you do this, or the ship that you attacked got its distress call out, then you probably will be wanted for the Piracy Act. So I don't know. There you are. So I guess if you happen to find some cargo floating there because of some other battle and you pick it up, you'll be okay as long as it's not sort of tagged with the sort of more fancy container stuff. All right, next question.
Okay, so we already know that that's been implemented. We've seen what this, in fact, if you guys haven't been in 3.20 or haven't seen it, cargo has been redone. And it's very cool the way it's done. I took out a whole C. I did a load of 2 items. I just wanted to max out the ship. And, these large cargo containers, these 32 SCU containers locked onto the ship. But you can also do it in smaller ships now. If you order a variety of different items, the cargo containers sizes adjust based upon that, where before you just used to have the 1 SCU container. Was it 1 SCU? Or 4 SCU or whatever it was. Or 2 SCU containers. Anyway, now the sizes are they vary depending on what it is you ordered, which is kind of cool. And it gives a much more realistic, immersive feeling that you have a variety of different things on instead of all these boxes all being the same size, which is pretty cool. So I do like this idea of the LoJack, though, that if you want to spend the extra money, you can, get these containers that have tracking built into them, which would be interesting for some people who may want to do that. I'm sure the price would be there for it. Some people will do it. Some people will care less about it, right? But anyway, they are thinking about stuff like that. Here we go.
Comes from Gaskell, who asks, Regarding star maps, will organizations be able to apply their own markers and notations on the star map so that all or selected members of the organization can share information, such as resource nodes held by allies, enemies, troop movements, etc.? So yeah, I mean, actually kind of one of the ideas with your navigation map is as you fly around, most navigation maps have sort of the basic trade routes or locations noted down, so like the main planet in the system or whatever, but there's a lot of the system that will not be mapped in your basic navigation map. And if you fly around, this is kind of one of the things that explorers can do, is if you fly around in a lot of areas, you may find an asteroid field that isn't on the navigation map or something else is in the navigation map, and then you essentially map that on your map, and you can, you have it as your sort of localized navigation point or coordinate area of interest, and you can write your own notes about it, and then you can share that with members in your organization. So like if you've discovered like an asteroid field that has like some rich minerals that are good to mine and no one else has seen it, you can like broadcast that to everyone else in your organization and say, hey, let's come here and let's do this mining, and everyone else won't know about it. Now, of course, you would be able to say sell some of that to a general cartographer company, because think of the navigation computer is just like a Monday GPS, right? And you get an updated disk of like locations to drive in. So another option is explorers could go around mapping stuff out, and then when they've mapped out the system fully, they can go and sell that, and that could become for purchase for a large group of people in the same way that we talked about for jump points. So that's all sort of things you can do. So you should be able to share sort of map information between the members of your organization. The next question comes from...
Okay, so I'm hoping, this whole new map thing, CIG's been working on this new thing with the Mobiglass. We're supposed to be getting some upgrades to that, and also the star map. And we saw some hints to that about a year ago of some new stuff that they were doing with it. I'm hoping that one of the big things that needs to be implemented is waypoints and markers. For those of you who do any type of mining, right now, the biggest marker you have is when someone else is with you and they sit in that spot while you go do something and come back, right? I mean, we need a way to let people know where certain things are, even on the ground level, on moons and planets. You do want to be able to set markers and things like that, waypoints, to let people know where they can go. As far as unveiling things, we know that Stanton, we've kind of covered everything in Stanton right now. People have been flying around in there for several years. So mapping things out isn't an issue there. I am curious to see how the uniqueness of mapping will work. I like the idea of that my map is blank until I go there and look around. That's cool. I like the idea of people being able to sell some information. Whether or not it's going to be to the point where some person maps out an entire system and is able to sell it, then that kind of diffuses the whole aspect of exploration. Unless maps are just extremely expensive, like ridiculously expensive. And it's not worth paying the credits for. It's like, screw that. For that much money, I'll go do it myself. If that becomes it, that's fine. But I am curious to know how they're going to keep that aspect of the game fresh. How do you keep it from people just going on the internet and publishing everything and saying, hey, here's the map here for free? I'm really curious as to how CIG is going to work around that set. Exploration remains something that only way you can do it is to find out by going out there and doing it, or maybe paying some ridiculous amount of money, but maybe when you do that, you can't pass the information on. I don't know. We'll have to see how they're going to work around that. Let's see. Let's go on to the next one.
From Artak Kulan Dingla. That's quite a mouthful of a word. Can you share any of the plans for Orgs 2.0? As an org leader, I have concerns about how multiple org membership will work and how I can manage my people. Unfortunately, I'm not the best person to answer that, because that would really be Benoit at Turbulent. But the stuff that we've talked about for Orgs 2.0 is, multiple organization membership is a must, because we're not going to have a sort of friends list per se. So basically, you'll be members of multiple organizations, and one of the organizations obviously could be, hey, my friends. But there'll only be one sort of primary organization, and then the other organizations will be affiliates. So the primary organization that your member is that's kind of the authoritative boss one, and the primary one, whoever runs it, can say, well, if you're a member of this organization, I won't accept you over here. You can't have that as an affiliate. So you can sort of dictate as an organization, okay, it's okay to be, you can be part of my organization and a member of the Merchants Guild, that's okay. But you can't be part of my organization and a member of the, the Pirates Guild or whatever it is. I know that the Pirates would have a guild, but that's sort of the approach you could do. So I think as an org leader, you can sort of control who are sort of members of different organizations. And there's some other kind of cool mechanics that we haven't quite revealed yet in that I think will make some fun. I mean, all I'll just say is, I think there's a concept that there could potentially be sort of a sort of, I don't know, special ops side of an organization where you can do some sort of clandestine spying stuff and misrepresent some stuff. And anyway, so we're going to put tools on both sides because we think that could be a bit of a meta game and it'd be kind of fun. But we're not revealing too much of that just yet. So anyway, there you go. So next question comes.
All right. So anyway, we pretty much get that. And I think that's what's going on now. We do know that you have your primary org that you're in, and then you've got your affiliates. And we do know that folks are definitely, some people are like, you just got to be in our org only and that's it. Other people allow room for you to be in other orgs. And then other ones will say, depends on what type of org that other thing is. If, like he said, if we're in this thing over here, but you're also in one of our competitive orgs or, a piracy org or something like that, you can't do both. So it'll be interesting to see once this thing gets fleshed out where people really decide to go. Because I know that certain organizations have said, if you're in this org, that's it. You can't be in anything else. And that's fine for some people. Other people will allow a little bit more flexibility as long as there's no conflict. So we'll see what happens.
From Zengrin, who asks, given how the universe instance server has been set up to matchmake on the fly and determine who will see who when entering a given area of space, are we guaranteed to instance with pilots in our friends list and organization preferred method, or will there be some gameplay mechanics such as creating a squadron or something similar required in order to force that to happen? No, so the way the whole point of having organizations and being members, and like I just mentioned on my previous answer, essentially your friends list would be an organization. It would just be sort of a less formal organization of, here's my list of friends, and that would probably be something you would keep as an affiliate organization when you're a member of a primary organization. It would be something like, I don't know, the Imperium or something like that. So what it does when it matchmakes and you're flying around, it kind of looks around and says, oh, well, I'm going in here and these are the other members that are part of your organization friends list, and it tries to put people together that it tries to put people together that you've designated as a person of interest. You can also, before you start out, you jump out or you go out, you can sort of basically hook up and say, yeah, we're flying as a group. So me and this friend and this friend, this is our little unit that's flying as a group, to let the game know that you're flying together. And then it'll do things like determine, based on ping, if it would be another criteria. Of course, if you say I'm flying with this group, that takes priority over everything else. And then also, kind of what your preference is in terms of combat, right? So whether you want to be sort of doing PvP or want to be fighting more sort of NPCs and PvE. And of course that depends on what area of space you're in, but we're not going to match up someone that just wants to be doing PvE in a fairly safe area with someone that just wants to do hardcore PvP, because that wouldn't necessarily be a lot of fun for the PvE side. And on the PvP side, there'll be plenty of opportunities to fight other people because we're making sure that there's a lot of benefit to being in sort of the less regulated areas, so like more risk, more reward, so to speak. But all those criteria are factored in when we're basically doing the instancing, and so we sort of decide, well, this group of players is coming from here to here, and they may intersect this other group, and then you just sort of run through the matchmaking criteria, and if you determine that they should see each other, you create an instance and you put the group into it, and then let the conflict resolve itself, and then they go back onto their journey.
Now, I don't know if the matchmaking, we do know that we have the friends list and stuff like that to be able to, bring people together. But the matchmaking dynamic, I'm not sure if that's there. I know when we go on Arena Commander, there is this dynamic of when you want to go into a fight, it's searching for people to join you. I've never known that was based upon, the skill level of the type of play that people have done. I think it's just kind of in general, but I could be wrong. So maybe if somebody who monkeys around in Arena Commander knows if the matchmaking is at that level of detail that Chris talked about, or based upon skill, interest, and all that other stuff is what brings people together, or whether you're just kind of thrown together. I'm not really sure, but that is something that people have talked about for a long time, is the whole matchmaking. I don't know when that's going to happen at the level that he's talking about, but, that was it back then.
Okay, so last question comes from Commander Keen, who asks, question about PC touchscreen support, not tablet. With PC OS such as Win 8 now natively supporting touchscreen, has there been any thought put towards allowing the same support in Star Citizen directly? No, not yet. Probably be something that we would consider, although everyone sort of hates Windows 8 here. So we're mostly developing on Windows 7.
Yeah, lady, I know. I'm
chuckling
chuckling
my
myself.
laptops, and it's kind of cool to scroll around. But most of the things that have the touchscreen stuff don't usually have they're not really they're the small sort of tablet-like or netbook-like computers, which obviously don't have the computing power to do Star Citizen. So that's not necessarily been a focus of ours. Not saying that we wouldn't potentially do some exploration and support of it down the road, but I would say that would be kind of a later task. I mean, already the game's got a huge amount of stuff to get done, and we've got so many features to do that that would be one of the less critical ones, and would probably fall to once the game has finished, and maybe we'll take a look at it. And who knows, Windows 9s could be much better. It's always the odd ones that are the good Windows, and the even ones suck. So we'll see. All right, so that's been another episode of 10 for the Chairman. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully my answers were informative to all you out there. And again, I want to thank all the subscribers for basically providing the funds to allow us to do a lot of this community content, and the backers and the community in general for supporting the team, helping us build this hugely ambitious project, which we're having an immense amount of fun doing with all your guys' participation. So I will check you next week. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay. Interesting stuff there. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's see, that's going backwards. I don't want to go backwards. Let's see. That was 10 for the Chairman, number 13. And we need to do, their numbers are so whack sometimes. There isn't even a 14 here. Okay, does that mean that they deleted it? 10 for the Chairman, special edition. 6. Yeah, there's no 14. What the heck? All right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap it up here because we had the Calling All Devs 13. We got the 10 for the Chairman 13. So let's stop there for now, because the one with Brian Chambers actually was twice the length of time that it normally would. So this is around the normal time that I'd be wrapping up. But anyway, what I want to say is, Lady Space Patrol, you hit it on the head. Game Glass kind of got the jump on everything, right? And that's kind of what we have for touchscreen now. There was really nothing pushing touchscreen after that, unless you've got one of these laptops that have the touch stuff. It's not such a big thing for players right now, especially for gamers. But if you've got Game Glass, or if you've got your mobile phone, hey, touch away. You can get Game Glass or a little iPad or whatever, or Amazon Pad, and you can have at it and touch all you want. Anyway, this was another interesting week of hearing some of this stuff. Some of the things, again, we see that CIG has implemented, and then of course there are some things that CIG still yet to come. Let's hope that as we get closer and closer to CitizenCon and CitizenCon arrives, we'll finally be able to see some of these things in a big way, not just as we mentioned earlier, no demos, no theories, no conversations, but we want something tangible that lets us show that the wait has been worth it in time. So anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with me today on Tuesday. On Thursday, we'll be back with Star Citizen this week. We'll be talking about Thursday Therapy, having a great time with that. And hopefully you guys can join us more for our Soul Citizens episodes on Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. This week is going to be on Sunday talking about, we're in our system tour, and we're going to be at Microtech this week. So hopefully you guys can join us for that at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Otherwise, thanks for following me here. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe on YouTube and here at Twitch. Thank you guys for being here. Those of you who subscribed today, thank you so much. Those of you who followed today, Thank you so much. My follower group is growing. It's growing. It's growing. And I really appreciate you guys. Everybody, we hope you guys have a great day, great week. Don't forget to test out 3.20. It is now available to waves 1, 2, 3, and 4. Lots of fun stuff in there to check out. Don't forget Master Modes is only in Arena Commander, but go check it out because it needs input, but it is definitely, I think it's pretty cool. I think it's going to change the way we play games in flight combat. So looking forward to trying it out. Anyway, you guys have a great week rather, and we'll see you hopefully on Thursday. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.